All right, let's finish up the war here. And we were talking yesterday about the Paris Peace Conference, and we said, look, the Treaty of Versailles that America wants to treat Germany pretty fairly, and basically they're like, hey, let's everybody just give the land back, and things will be good. And I don't know if I got a chance to show you guys. Did show you all this map yesterday? The breakup of the countries. This right here shows you Europe, what it's like before the war and then after the war. And you can see that they break up the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they break up Germany. And the idea behind Wilson's 14 points is if you stick all the little ethnic groups into the same countries, then they're less likely to get angry about being ruled by somebody else. Okay? So, like, you got all the Austrians in Austria, right? And you got all the Slavs in one nation too. And people aren't going to get bent out of shape about that, right? Because they're with their own people, right? That was the idea behind all the land motivation, right? But then we said yesterday, Great Britain and France wanted to really punish and humiliate Germany. What did they do? Make them do with their military? 100,000 men in the army. The Navy got reduced down to 6 ships, couldn't have any U-boats, no Air Force. They made them pay for the war. They made them accept blame for the war. They had to give up a crap ton of land. And Germany feels like they got screwed. Okay? Now, something else that's relevant for us here, too. Okay? Other people at the Paris Peace Conference show up that are important. The Japanese show up. Okay? The Japanese show up. Technically, they'd been one of the members of the Allied nation. Okay? They'd been part of the winning team, right? But the Japanese have a couple things in mind, right? When they get there, number one, they wanted some island colonies in the Pacific that had belonged to Germany, right? And nobody had any problem with them taking those. They're like, sure, Japan, take them. They're right around your country anyway, so take them. And Japan's like, thank you, konnichiwa, all right? Domo arigato. Now, the Japanese are thrilled to have him, but the Japanese want something else. Okay? They want in the treaty, written into the treaty, they want a statement about racial equality. Okay? They want a statement about racial equality. Why do you think they want that? Why do they want a statement about all races being inherently equal? If you're the Japanese, why do you want European nations and America to agree to that? Remember, they were considered a lower power, and remember, what did they do when other nations like the United States tried to exploit them? What did they change about their culture, their society? What is it? They changed and became a modern Western nation. They upended their entire system of life and became a modern power. All right? But how do Western nations like the United States and European nations still view them? As lesser than. They're like, hey, maybe you got modern weapons and you think you're like us, but you're really not. All right? There's an inherent sense of racism, and Japan wants them to recognize that. They want them to say specifically in writing in this treaty that, hey, we're racially all the same, that our race is equal to yours. And do you think America and Great Britain and France in particular are going to do that? Not a chance, because they don't believe it. There's a serious anti-Asian bias both at the Paris Peace Conference and in general in the world. Americans, they're not simply not going to look at Japan in the same way. And look, this is another slight against Japan. Okay, think of it this way for a second. Go back. Remember, 1850, President Millard Fillmore sends a letter to the Japanese, kind of low-key threatening them. If you don't trade with us, we're going to have problems. Then, when Japan modernizes and becomes a modern nation, and they defeat Russia in a war, and they want some respect, and nobody's still willing to give it to them. Then, when Teddy Roosevelt's the American president, he sends around the Great White Fleet all around the world, showing people America's naval strength, and he makes sure to stop in Japan and flex on them. Okay? And Japan sees this as one more slap in the face from the United States. Okay? And believe me, there are going to be some more slaps in the face. And Japan feels like the United States is simply not cooperating. They're not doing what they should be doing. And daggone it, they're getting to the point where they're getting a little annoyed with this. How many times can somebody disrespect you before you do something about it? Ooh. Apparently, at least a few times. There's another guy that shows up at the Paris Peace Conference. By the way, the Japanese, they get so annoyed because there's no statement of racial equality. Their delegation that shows up, they got up and left. Like, see y'all later. There's another little Asian fellow that shows up, a guy by the name of Ho Chi Minh. Okay? And in this class, if we're talking about a Ho, that's the Ho we're talking about. Okay? Remember, a lot of Asian nations, they put the last name first. Right? So if you got to get your laughter out about us joking about a Ho, now's the time. It is a fun name. Right? Ho Chi Minh is from Vietnam. Okay? Ho Chi Minh is from Vietnam. Now, think back for a minute. Vietnam back then was called Indochina. Ho Chi Minh, who is in charge of his country at that point? The French, okay? And it's a colony, it's a French colony. And Ho Chi Minh shows up at the Paris Peace Conference, and there's a good reason why. He read or heard about Woodrow Wilson's 14 points, and he said, you know that point about nations should give up their colonial claims, their territories, their colonies, and you should allow colonies to have self-determination, that they should get to pick who rules over them? He really liked that idea. And he said, if I could just get in there and talk to Woodrow Wilson, maybe America could convince France to give up their colonies. And what do you think Western nations do to Ho Chi Minh? Do you think they pay attention to him? No, they just kind of ignore him because they're like, we got more important things to do right now. All right. And in 1919, Ho Chi Minh's not really an important guy. Okay. But Ho Chi Minh's going to be really important 40 years later when America's fighting the Vietnam War. At that point, he had helped lead a revolution against the French. And he said, if I can't get help to kick out the French, I'll do it on my own. And Ho Chi Minh, if America had perhaps done something about it in 1919, they could have saved themselves a really big headache later on. Hoes are always causing problems. Is that too far? What? Is that too far? Poor Ho Chi Minh, okay? He couldn't get in to talk to Woodrow Wilson. And look, Ho Chi Minh is going to be a real problem for America over the next couple decades. All right? Now, one thing that Woodrow Wilson did stress the importance of, he said, hey, if you guys are going to punish Germany and if you're really going to break up Austria-Hungary and do these other terrible things to some of these nations, we got to have this League of Nations, okay, this international peacekeeping group. He said, at the very least, if we have the League of Nations, we can prevent war from breaking out again, all right? Because he said we can talk out the problems and make sure that people don't shoot each other over some silliness, all right? And here's the crazy thing about it. Everybody was on board with the idea of the League of Nations, but here's where things got difficult. Most people don't realize this, but in American government, the president gets to negotiate any treaty that we're involved in, but the United States Senate has to give their approval, okay? And Woodrow Wilson was a Democrat, and he went back home with this Treaty of Versailles and said, hey, U.S. Senate, would you guys approve this for me? And the Senate, which was full of Republicans, said, yeah, we're not going to do that. All right? They refused to participate in the League of Nations. So literally, Woodrow Wilson's idea, his League of Nations, that he comes up with and he gets almost the rest of the world to join in on, America's not part of it. Doesn't that seem ironic? It's really crazy, too. The League of Nations at their headquarters, their international headquarters, they had a statue of Woodrow Wilson there. But, you know, America's not part of it. That would be awkward. All right. Now, here's the final results from the Paris Peace Conference. Okay. Nobody ends up being happy with the result. All right. Nobody's really happy. Okay. Because is Germany happy about what happened to them with this treaty? No. They feel like they got screwed. Okay. And they probably did. All right. America is upset because, number one, we're not even party to the treaty. Right. And we feel like, gosh, Great Britain and France are probably a little harsh on Germany. And in Great Britain and France, they're not really happy because what do they think? We didn't punish Germany enough. All right? So it's like nobody's really happy. The Asian nations aren't happy because they kind of get regarded. They're like, oh, you're at the kids' table. And that's how we looked at them. It was, remember, we look at colonized nations or Asian and African nations with a paternalistic attitude. You're these cute little kids over here that don't know any better. Right? By the way, do you think there's still kind of an element of racism towards Asian people from Western Europeans and white people? Yeah. I think so, right? We think our culture is automatically superior, all right? Now, here's the thing. At the end of World War One, okay, what's happened is Germany is terribly bitter, right? And the bitter conditions from the Treaty of Versailles and right after World War One, they are going to help make World War Two possible. They're going to help make the Nazis possible. Because one of the things that Hitler and the Nazis are going to play on is we got screwed by the Treaty of Versailles, and we need to build up Germany like it was when it was an empire before the war started, right? And a lot of people are going to find that really appealing. Okay, now that's the end of this particular chapter. The world is bothered by all this, but we're going to have a crazy time in the 1920s.